Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online series 11 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we are using what is probably the best Sun team running around at the moment. This is a team that was built by Leonardo Bonanomi, who just won a invitational tournament organized by the Pokemon Company International, featuring 8 of the best players around the world. Leonardo also has maybe just been the most consistent player in the online era in Sword and Shield. He was a runner-up in 2 different Players' Cups. Just to make it even to a Players' Cup finals in itself is really impressive, and Leonardo made it to the finals twice, which is absolutely wild. So he finally got a really big tournament victory with this exact team in a Series 11 tournament, and he is really one of the masters of the Sun archetype. So, you know, Sun is truly one of the strongest kind of combos and strategies to use in Sword and Shield, and this team just maximizes its efficiency, in my opinion. So first of all, huge congratulations to Leonardo for winning the Invitational. He has just been such an amazing player, easily one of the best in the world, and to be as consistent as he is, especially in online, is just so impressive. And I think normally when people think about Sun as an archetype, they think it's like pretty inconsistent because, of course, when you're using Pokemon like Groudon, you can miss Precipice Blades. When you're using Venusaur, you can miss Sleep Powder. But in a format with Max, right, like Series 11 relative to Series 10, you actually have a lot more reliable options, right? Because Groudon can actually max and go for Max Quake rather than relying on Precipice Blades. You don't have to rely on hitting attacks like Heat Wave or Blast Burn or Hurricane with Charizard if you can just max and go for the Gigantamax attacks, right? So I think part of the reason why the Sun archetype in general is so powerful is because you have so many good max options. With this team, Groudon, Charizard, Venusaur are all really strong max options. Gieleki can max in certain scenarios, and even Incineroar as well. So like 5 of the 6 Pokemon are very viable candidates for maxing. So, you know, nothing about this team is super wild, but it is just generally really consistent. You have Swords Dance Groudon. This Groudon will stay on the field for a long time, even when not Dynamaxed, and just a single Swords Dance turns this into an absolute monster, where you can just sweep through with Max Quake and Max Rockfall, respectively. Focus Sash Venusaur is really interesting. I think, you know, players often expect something like Life Orb or Wildlands or Weakness Policy or Sash, like one of the items. And what's nice about Sash is that it turns Venusaur into a Pokemon that can be a good max option. You're going to do a little bit of less damage, but the thing is that G-Max Mind Lash's residual damage is still so good. Like, you can still get a ton of value out of it. So in the right matchups, right, against the Kyogre team, for example, Venusaur can still be really good at maxing. But the other thing is that with Focus Sash, you can actually often use this as a non-max option and just use it for a big Leaf Storm or even a Sleep Powder, for example. The key thing I want to stress in using Sun is you don't want to rely on Sleep Powder. If you are leading Venusaur turn 1 and you are clicking Sleep Powder, you have to ask yourself, like, is that just the most optimal play for me? Because Sleep Powder is an attack that is very prone to missing, and Venusaur also, you know, often will be going for Sleep Powder before your opponent attacks, especially when the sun is up. And so it's like there's a lot of variability for whether or not, you know, you even hit the Sleep Powder and whether or not your opponent wakes up early enough. But the strength in Sleep Powder with the fast Sleep Powder in general is that it's kind of like a get out of jail card, where if you're in a really tricky situation and you don't know what else to do, you can just maybe like bring that Groudon up and go for that really fast Sleep Powder. The main thing to call out here is that it's Weather Ball and the Leaf Storm, so there's no Sludge Bomb, it's not Giga Drain or Energy Ball, for example. Leaf Storm, of course, gives you a stronger burst of damage, especially into Pokemon like Kyogre and Groudon, and as a result, like, this Venusaur, while is really good as a max option, is often also just really strong as a non-max option thanks to this set. To round out the team, you've got Classic Avian Sing, Classic Magnet Gieleki, not much to say about those. Leftovers, Umbreon. We actually had Umbreon on the team we just featured, but it didn't get to come out very often, and I think on this team, there's a lot more room to bring it out because it naturally, you're going to be bringing Groudon the majority of the time, right? So Umbreon can take advantage of the sun and go for Moonlight. It's also just really good for disruption. You want to, like, have this Pokemon on the field and just, like, chip away at Pokemon. You know, go for even a single Yawn is a really big deal in getting a free Swords Dance off with Groudon, so look for combos with that. And then finally, Life Orb Charizard. Nothing too wild here, but do note the moveset. Instead of something like Solar Beam and Scorching Sands, you actually have Blast Burn, which just allows you to have a stronger Gigantamax attack, as well as Hurricane, which allows you to have a stronger Max Airstream, right? The key thing to note about Hurricane is it's obviously very unreliable in non-max form, so Charizard, if you're bringing out, you're probably going to want to max most of the time. Part of the strength of this team is that you could lead like any combination of Pokemon, and it'll probably be a pretty good lead. Even something like Charizard Venusaur is interesting because you can just pivot in Groudon for either of those slots in, you know, on turn 1 and then sweep with either. But yeah, I think the strength of this team is that it is so flexible and that you really can go with any Pokemon. You have so many max options, so many different ways to play the game. And yeah, the residual effect from Charizard and Venusaur is truly just, you know, one of the best effects in the game. So yeah, not surprised Leonardo was able to win with this team. He is such a phenomenal player. He's played Sun more than really most players, or really any player I've seen at a high level for multiple months. And yeah, so congrats to him for winning the invitation organized by Pokemon. You can go check out the VODs on Pokemon's YouTube channel or Twitch channel for those, and you really should see the master at work because, of course, he piloted this team to first place. So I linked his Twitter down in the description below. Thanks so much to him, and thanks to you all, as always, for watching. If you enjoyed, please show your support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. And question of the day, of course, with so much Sun running around, I'm curious what Sun counters you've seen that you think are good or underrated. Personally, I still think Rain Dance Tornadus is one of my favorites, but you obviously have to build around it. That alone isn't going to counter Sun. So let me know yours in the comment section below, and let's get started. All right, our first match of the day, and it's going to be a Dragonite. Okay, that's interesting. With Whimsicott, Indeede, Calyrex, Torkoal, and Regieleki. Huh. Honestly, feels more like a Series 10 team than a Series 11 team. Umbreon is very, very, very good here, which I'm happy about because I didn't really get to utilize Umbreon very much with the previous team. I think the main thing to watch out for them is them setting up Tailwind and then just sweeping with Calyrex or Dragonite. I normally don't love Incineroar plus Umbreon, but I actually think it's not bad here. I guess the problem, they could go like Whimsicott, Dragonite. But I think I want Incin, Umbreon, Venu, Groudon. Well, Venu does have Focus Sash, which is actually very handy into the Calyrex stuff. If I'm my opponent, I'm probably leading Whimsicott, Calyrex, or Whimsicott, Dragonite. Maybe Calyrex plus Indeede. Those are the three that I think are super strong for them. I'm going to go Incin, Umbreon, Groudon. I don't know who to go between Venusaur and Charizard here. I'm leaning towards Venusaur because of that Focus Sash. I think the scary thing here is that my opponent has a nice way to outspeed us with Tailwind, right? And the other thing is that Charizard can get... It's the Regieleki that I was scared of. I guess Charizard could survive the early game, though. Okay, they're going to go with Indeede and Dragonite. I guess the scary thing here is that they have, like, Helping Hand into Superpower into Incineroar. That could be awkward for us. Got Foul Play, which is cool. This is a nice lead by them. I really like this lead. Down to U-turn. Honestly, Yawn is kind of nice here just to start forcing them to switch out. Because if you have to switch out, that means you have to bring something in. And that means I can snarl whatever is coming in. Even if they go for Helping Hand Superpower, it's not the end of the world. Because then you don't have that much damage pressure going into turn 2 of the match. And it gives me a free switch in as well. And then Groudon can potentially Swords Dance up in front of this. So, I feel fine with this lead. It is Helping Hand though. Okay, yeah, I should be Superpower then, I think. But I can't click Fake Out into Dragonite and flinch it thanks to Inner Focus. Yeah, they're going to target Incin. It's fine by me. Nice turn by them. Very nice turn by them. But, like I mentioned, now I get to bring in the Groudon for free. And the other awkward thing is I just clicked Yawn. So if you're my opponent now, it's like, what do you really switch into? Because everything else in the back is a special attacker. So what I can do right now with Umbreon is... I can go for a Yawn or I can Snarl, and I lean more towards Snarling because I'm scared of Calyrex coming out for free for my opponent. I'd be really shy. Like, actually, what are their switch-ins here? Every other Pokemon on their team's a special attacker, so we have so much value out of Snarl here. So yeah, I'm down to just Swords Dance and Snarl and play towards Groudon in this game. Like... They sacrificed a decent amount for turn 1, and it makes sense because Incineroar... Oh, interesting. Okay. I don't think this KOs Umbreon, and if it doesn't, we are in really good shape. I'm also just faster than Dragonite, which I wasn't expecting there. Okay. Yeah, let's just go for another Superpower. Cool. I'm really surprised about that since Umbreon is very tanky, but I guess they were just hoping to pick up a knockout and not risk a switch in. It also could be, I guess, like a Lumberry Dragonite, which would be interesting here. But Umbreon is such a beautiful Pokemon to have on this team because it's so good into that Calyrex Shadow Rider that my opponent has. Cool. So now Dragonite falls asleep unless you're Lum or Chestoberry. Haven't seen Chestoberry in so long. I could go for another Swords Dance, but I don't really think we need to go for it at this point in the game because, like, the rest of their team is really fragile. So, like, what I can do now is actually just Dynamax and Quake into the Indeede while also going for a Moonlight here with Umbreon. We actually don't want to knock out Dragonite because the Dragonite slot is, like, useless for my opponent right now. I've also revealed Snarl, so my opponent's probably a little bit scared of switching out. But the idea is now my opponent's team only has one physical attacker. Everything else is a special attacker. And with the combination of Snarl and special defense boosts via Max Quake, I can make it so that it's so difficult to knock out my Groudon and Umbreon. Now, normally I would think twice about maxing this turn just because, like, the Groudon isn't actually at risk of taking much damage. But I like the idea of getting these special defense boosts early on, especially if Indeede does not go for a Protect this turn. Even if it protects, it's fine. The idea is that Groudon realistically should be able to get to +3 special defense in this game, and that's pretty good for us. My only issue is actually like dealing damage to Dragonite later on in the game, but they're not going to go for a Protect with Indeede, which is perfect. That's going to just give us the knockout. And it is important to note that because our Groudon actually does outspeed the Dragonite, I don't have to worry as much about the end game because it's at -2 defense right now, and it's asleep. So I can maybe max Rockfall at this next turn. Kind of depends on what comes in, but now we'll be able to heal all the way back up with Umbreon as well. So yeah, this is just an amazing matchup for Umbreon because, first of all, they have Calyrex Shadow Rider, so that's like probably the best restricted Pokemon Umbreon can go up into, and it's one of the main reasons it's on the team. But also, too, my opponent's team is so reliant on special damage, and Groudon can increase Umbreon's special defense. So we are in very good shape right now. I got a free Swords Dance off, and that's the thing, right? My opponent went all in on turn 1 to pick up a knockout onto Incineroar, but it meant that turn 2, I had a very safe player bringing Groudon in and clicking Swords Dance. At best, they can maybe go for like a Helping Hand plus something, but yeah, even then. So Regieleki comes out. Aleki protecting here seems like the play for my opponent. I honestly don't mind rock falling at this point in the game and just knocking out Dragonite, because what that also does is set up the Sand, meaning that it breaks a potential Focus Sash on Aleki. Like, I just don't think my opponent can beat Groudon right now. Aleki's completely walled by Groudon, and I have very little incentive to actually target Aleki here, because it's like, Aleki is literally not going to do anything into Groudon, and Umbreon's at +1 special defense, you're not going to do much to that. And then I've got Venusaur in the back, right? So it's like Aleki just doesn't really threaten any of the Pokemon I brought in this matchup. And the reason I think my opponent brought it was to cover for my Charizard, which makes a ton of sense, but I didn't bring Charizard here. So Dragonite's going to switch out. This Rockfall punishes the switch in. It's Calyrex coming in. And if they don't crit a Thunderbolt onto us and we hit Snarl, like Rockfall itself might just pick up the knockout, but we'll see. I do think the idea of switching out Dragonite there is smart. Now that is interesting. I wonder if they max guard here just to survive the turn, or they're just going for max lightning onto Umbreon. I mean, max lightning into Umbreon makes sense, but it's not KOing us with the special defense boost, even if you're Life Orb or Magnet. Unless you crit. That's the one scary thing. But even if you crit, like, I don't see how you're beating Groudon. And they do go for the max guard, yeah. But this is the thing, right? Why in the world would I ever target Aleki? This is smart for my opponent's end, though, because I think they're saying, okay, well, my only way of winning is for my opponent to really mess up right now. And if I can completely negate a turn while getting in Calyrex in for free, maybe there's still a shot. The only tricky thing here is that they just did not have good late game damage, so I think even if they had just maxed Lightning there, or didn't max and, switching Calyrex safely, like, I just don't really see a way to win from their end, because Groudon is just in such an amazing position, so, yeah. I think we generally had a decent matchup here, and my opponent, like, this is a good example of how sometimes picking up an early knockout doesn't necessarily actually benefit you, and trading a Pokemon to get a free Swords Dance up is actually amazing for us. So, yeah. I was expecting my opponent to go with the Tailwind route with Whimsicott. They did not. That's fine. In fact, it may have actually benefited us more, just because Whimsicott actually would have pressured Umbreon with Moonblast. And Whimsicott's also just like a tricky Pokemon because it gets access to Switcheroo, Taunt, Encore, so it's a whole bag of tricks you have to watch out for. We can just Rockfall Dragonite here. Yeah, there's no point in yawning because they're just going to set up the terrain, but Rockfall should just KO Dragonite. Yeah. This was just Groudon domination, but it wasn't just about Groudon, right? It was the Umbreon in the back, and one thing that's important is setting up the early game. And so, like, if I just lead Groudon, for example, I can't make that Swords Dance play with as much confidence because, you know, my opponent could pressure with, like, Helping Hand from Indeede and then, like, maybe Max Airstream from Dragonite. So, it was AB Dragonite. Okay, Thunder Punch, that's interesting. No Dragon-type attack, actually, but they did a dual Wing Beat. Focus Sash, Whimsicott. Yep, there's that Encore. So I think Whimsicott actually would have been a game changer for my opponent because you could Encore or go for Moonblast into Umbreon. Lagging Tail. Oh, that is interesting. Thank goodness that they did not manage to get a trick onto us. And actually, if they had gone for Trick the turn that they went for Helping Hand Superpower, that would have been really bad for us. So I guess they were just expecting to knock out Umbreon, but Umbreon's really bulky defensively. Life Orb, Specs Torkoal. What protecting Will-O-Wisp? That's interesting. And then Magnetaleki. Yeah. Cool. Dragonite's a cool Pokemon in general, so always fun to go up against that. But yeah, that was a really good match for Groudon. So let's just keep it going. Second game of the day, and it's an exact mirror match. At least I think so, because the Pokemon are in the same order and the genders are all the same. And since this is a rental team, like, yeah, it's highly, highly likely we're just using the same team comp here. Oh, man. I don't know how to play the mirror. I don't know. And the other question is, who do you drop? I'm just trying to figure out a way to play in which we don't rely on Charizard. Or sorry, Sleep Powder. I know Charizard Venusaur is a really common lead with this team because it allows you to play flexible with Groudon in the back, but then it does feel weird to drop one of Umbreon or Incin. Like, they're both generally valuable for us here. They're both really good, actually. I almost, like, don't want to bring Venusaur because, like, just that it counters Groudon so well. I'm also nervous about their Venusaur coming out and just, like, using Sleep Powder is the other problem. Charizard, Umbreon, Incin, Groudon? I really don't know what the, like... I'm sure there's a pretty good flowchart as to how you want to approach the mirror match, but I'm going to learn the hard way here and see how it plays out. So, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe Venusaur is just too important to give up. But the thing is, if you miss a Sleep Powder on Venu and the Charizard maxes... Wow, they actually go with the Lecky. Okay. That's a smart bring. Charizard protecting here is super duper obvious. I could see a Lecky Volt switching. I get a little bit less value out of Wildfire right now because Incin doesn't really take damage from it. So what do I think's in the back? They're going with Incin Lecky. You would think Groudon and then one of Charizard or Venu. You know what you could do? You could Volt Switch into Umbreon and U-turn it and then pivot in both Groudon. Oh, that would actually be so cool. Okay, I'm actually going to protect and hard switch into Groudon here, I think. The logic here is by going for this, Lecky is stuck on the field going into turn 2, and I have a Groudon out against an Lecky and an Incineroar. Incineroar might go for a parting shot. Or sorry, not parting shot, U-turn here. If I were my opponent, I would have gone Volt Switch and U-turn into the Groudon slot, and then pivot Lecky back in. I'm happy to see a max here if that's max Lecky. Is it max Lecky? Okay, cool. Now this makes sense for my... It's still going to do a lot of damage, actually, between that and the solar power on Charizard. Like, we're actually going to take a gross amount of damage. But it's okay. Like, they're maxing solely to beat Charizard right now, so I can play around it. Okay, they did target Charizard, it's a good play. They were hoping for me to max, basically. Yeah, that's still a lot of damage, but it's fine. I survived the turn, which is the more important thing. But the problem here is if the Incin U-turns out and then goes into a Charizard or a Venusaur, actually. Both are really scary here. Yeah, nice play. I could have switched the other way around, which would have been so sweet. Like, eat up a Max Lightning and get a Snarl off there. Oh, that would have been amazing for us. I would definitely be bringing out Charizard over Venusaur right now if I... Like, that should be what's coming in, yeah. Okay, so Venusaur can Leaf Storm us. Which is obviously scary. can even max Incin in this game, which is wild. They can't Sleep Powder us, though, which is good. So, like, I almost want to switch Groudon out immediately into Incineroar to take the Leaf Storm so then I can Fake Out next turn, and then give up Charizard here. Yeah, I like that. Because the idea here is we know Venusaur doesn't have Protect, meaning then I can click Fake Out and Swords Dance the subsequent turn, and you can't stop that right now if you're my opponent. So they've committed an early Dynamax, and their Dynamax is primarily valuable into Charizard, right? So it's like they spent 2 turns to knock out Charizard. I'm okay with that. Yep, there's Leaf Storm. Perfect. Okay, AB Instant takes that like an absolute champion. They could have doubled up onto that slot, which would actually be really interesting, but yeah, then you just eat up a huge Heat Wave. You don't want to do that. Cool. That's 2 turns of my opponent's Dynamax down now. I could bring in Umbreon, but I think it's fine to just go back out into Groudon. If I'm my opponent, I'm probably switching out the Venusaur here. But because they set up the Electric Train, not having to worry about Sleep Powder is so nice right now for us. Yeah, like you would think Venus switches out, but I'm still going to go for the safe play of Swords Dance and Fake Out. Mainly because if your Venus switches out, you're bringing in Incin most likely. It could be Groudon as well, but the key thing here is getting our Groudon in a good spot. And they don't switch out, which is such a big deal because now you lose your Focus Sash as well. Amazing. So it's like, even if I go down 4-2 in this game, I honestly think I'm okay with that. Nice, and Incin survives that too. Beautiful. Key thing now is I get the Swords Dance off. I think at this point we just max Groudon and target the Venusaur slot. Unless they didn't bring Groudon on the back and their last one is Charizard, which would be... That would be wild. Yeah, I think I'm fine to just max Quake here. The question is, would I rather give up Incin or Umbreon here? Umbreon's still full HP, so I think the answer is just conserve Umbreon because it actually give us utility with Yawn, and it's pretty difficult for my opponent to knock out. So I'm down to just max Quake the Venusaur here and Flare Blitz the Alecki slot. Cool, they stay in, which is really good. As long as I don't get crit by a Leaf Storm here, Groudon should survive the turn. Maybe Alecki Volt switches out, but that's fine. This is a fun game, though, because I think it's, yeah, I mean, we're using the same Pokemon, but we took very different approaches to this game. Like, I didn't even bring Venusaur. I brought Charizard, they brought Alecki. Oh, they just forget about their Electric Terrain. Okay. I'll take it, I guess. Yeah, that means you have even less damage in a Groudon now. And that's the downside of going for Max Lightning turn 1, right? That's why I felt so confident as soon as they went for Max Lightning with the Groudon setup here for us. Okay, so I'll get the knockout there. Fantastic. Now, I still have 2 turns of Dynamax left. Your Alecki is completely useless into my Groudon slot, so... And I know you have Incineroar in the back. Sure, that brings me down to +1, but I still will KO you. If I'm my opponent, I'm probably bringing... Well, I was going to say, I'd bring Groudon in first, but they're just going to bring in Incin, which is fine by me. And I think the cool thing with Umbreon right now is I can just keep giving this special defense boosts. Like, you can go for a Thunderbolt onto me, but you won't KO me. And I can just Moonlight all of that damage back up. Especially because their terrain is about to expire. So, we're just going to Quake here into Incin. We know it's Assault Vested. Can't Protect, doesn't have a Shuka Berry, and Moonlight here. They're not going to switch out. Okay, just Thunderbolt. Perfect. 202 down to 91, so that'd, I mean, that was yeah, it's not bad, right? Like, it did just over 50%, but now I'll just heal back all of that damage, and your Electric Terrain is gone. So, this is a classic game in which, like, we conserved our Dynamax, and my opponent didn't get enough out of their Dynamax. Basically, the play they made turn 1 was hoping for me to go all in and max Charizard. But that's exactly why I didn't, right? If I max Charizard there and Alecki actually just max Lightnings us, we lose the game. So, and it's not 100% loss. I mean, like, regular Groudon could still pull off a comeback potentially, but then I'd have to be playing against a Venusaur with the Leaf Storm. So, yeah. This was one in which, like, there's just very little reason to risk it on turn 1. And the main play I wanted to cover for, because what I would have done in my opponent's shoes was potentially Volt Switch and U-turn out. What you could do is Volt Switch, bring Groudon in, and then U-turn to bring Alecki back in. That's like a really cool way to get Alecki out and back in at the same time to prevent it from getting knocked out, but then also pressure the next turn and get Groudon in relatively safely. So that's the main thing I wanted to watch out for. Anyway, now I'm down to just Max Quake the Alecki slot and go for a Yawn into the Groudon. We should survive a T-Bolt into a Precipice Blades here, I think. And I'm not sure a +1 Precipice Blades knocks out Groudon here. So I'd rather just get the guaranteed knockout. Like, right now we have the better end of the trade-off, right? Because I should go for Rock Slide, but you can't flinch because we're into focus anyway. So I guess they might have forgotten about that, which is fair. It's easy to misremember things like that. Yeah, I mean, we also got a little bit fortunate in this game. Like, my opponent went for the Sleep Powder and the Rock Slide. Like, there were slightly better opportunities on both of those turns, whether it be, like, going for a crit Leaf Storm on a Groudon or crit Precipice Blades here into Umbreon. Like, I think it would have been really hard for them to win anyway, but there's just slight opportunities to, like, maximize your potential. But now we get Yawn off. Perfect. But yeah, this was really interesting because even though it was an exact mirror match, we actually took completely different approaches, right? They brought an Gieleki and the Venusaur, whereas I brought Charizard and Umbreon. So, yeah. Like, you're always going to have at least 2 of the same Pokemon, right? So it's interesting that how different the rest of the approach ended up being. Yeah, so now we can just foul play Precipice Blades. There's still a win con here for my opponent, which is me missing every single Precipice Blades and then getting an early wake up as well, but we were able to just connect and get a crit on top. I feel like we've had a lot of good like residual RNG that we haven't really needed in the last couple of days, so I guess I'll take it. Better to be lucky than unlucky, right? So, yeah. Mirror matches are always interesting when they're the exact same team, and yeah, because like, sometimes the most optimal way to play is to just bring the exact same 4 Pokemon and, lead the same thing and go from there. And in this one, my opponent just went, very, very aggro and trying to knock out Charizard. But this like turn 1 reminds me very much of the turn 1 from the last game, where it's like you go all in to try to pick up a knockout on something. And actually in the first game it worked out, but the thing is I had so many more resources in the back that it was fine giving up something. And then in this game it was like, well, they committed their Dynamax to try to deal with Charizard, but because I didn't max, they spent 2 turns just to knock out Charizard. And then a max Gieleki just can't hit the Groudon at all. So our Groudon was in a super safe position, especially after baiting out that Leaf Storm. Had Venusaur not clicked Leaf Storm that turn and gone for something like a Weather Ball instead, could have been really scary, but Leaf Storm just makes so much sense there, right? Because you don't want Groudon to just safely stay in. And even if they had gone for a Weather Ball, like Incin would have just been able to pressure with Fake Out onto Venu. It could still Sword Dance the next turn and then max Groudon anyway. And since it's not Life Orb on Venusaur, we don't take as much damage. And yeah, it like hurts the Groudon, but the main thing is that there wasn't much damage coming out from the rest of my opponent's team. Gieleki is out on the field. It can't hit Groudon. Incin, you can go for a Flare Blitz, but Groudon will outspeed. And then, of course, my opponent has their own Groudon, but Precipice Blades into a Dynamax Groudon doesn't really deal that much damage when it's spread type damage. So, yeah, fun second game, and let's just look for another one. Third game of the day, and it is a Comfey with Kyogre. Okay. Comfey typically implies weakness policy. Venusaur is good here, but has to worry about max Airstreams from Thundurus and Landorus. Well, I'm glad we get to have a Weather War here. That's always fun. I don't know. I like Umbreon because it can yawn into either Thundurus or Landorus, and I feel like that's so valuable. Like, I think Umbreon is so good here for us. So I think Umbreon and Groudon are a must bring. I think I'd probably drop Incineroar. And I'd like Gieleki for Kyogre. That's essentially it. I have to also potentially worry about Trick Room here. Charizard also notably does not have Max Quake. I think I'm down for Umbreon, Venusaur, Groudon, and I could just bring Charizard as well. I feel like Gieleki is generally nice because it's really good against the restricted Pokemon in itself. One way I could have also played is just to go for the, like, Charizard Venu is actually a really strong lead, and I feel like that's something that players didn't do as much of in Series 8. Because, like, the thing with Charizard Venu is, based off your opponent's lead, you can just flex and switch either Pokemon out into Groudon and then take advantage of the other Pokemon. Because, they both do a lot of damage, but they have slightly different type coverages. Okay, Thundurus plus Landorus. My old friends from 2013. Hello. I have so many options, I just don't know what the best one is. Because, like, Both of these Pokemon can max Airstream me right now. That's scary. Like, what I want to do is switch... if I switch Venusaur onto Groudon, though, that's bad. I don't want to risk a Sleep Powder turn 1. Like, what's maxing here? Also, this could be Swagger. Like, Self-Swagger. I'm going to go for the Yawn onto the... I don't know. Who's maxing here? I'm targeting Landorus and switching in Groudon, but they outled me here on turn 1, I would say. I also have to worry about Weather Ball, potentially on either Pokemon, mainly Thundurus. Wait, that gets access to Weather Ball, right? I feel like or am I misconflating it with, misremembering it with Zapdos? Okay, what's maxing here? Because if it's Landorus maxing or not Lumberry, this is a great turn 1, but it very easily could be like Thundurus maxing. And it's like choice Landorus. Okay, it's Landorus maxing, nice. That was kind of a gamble turn 1. I really was not sure. But this is the beauty of Umbreon. Being able to at least even pressure Landorus turn 1 is good. Is it Swagger? Okay, you just go for Scary Face. So Scary Face max Airstream is my guess here. So this is a great turn 1, all things considered. Unless it is Lumberry Landorus with Swagger Thundurus, which totally could be the case. Like, we just used the team like that, right? Notably, they actually didn't even deal 50% there. But that is way too close for me to be comfortable, and I would think it's a damage roll, and I actually would have preferred for them to just have picked up the Citrus there and done over half. But if I protect here, I can always survive, which is cool. Now, if you're my opponent, though, one thing I have to watch out for is a Kyogre switch-in. Like, they could even switch Lando out into Kyogre, so I'm going to protect and Snarl here. Okay, if they're staying in, they've got to be Lumberry, I think, which I don't love. They just Thunderbolt, that's fine. Maybe it's a double up on Umbreon. I could have Moonlighted then. Nice play. Moonlight would have been amazing there. That's a really good play. That's me playing a little bit too scared of Landorus getting a higher roll. You've got to be Lum, right? If you're not Lum, I'm in such a good spot. I'm expecting Lum, but let's see. Okay. I think this feels exactly like the Lando combo we just went up against. Yep, so it's probably Swagger then on Thundurus. Okay. That's also why they made that play turn 1, which makes a ton of sense. So, you could double up onto my Umbreon again. I am going to go for Moonlight here. And Rock Slide. I can't max Groudon because they're going to have Kyogre in the back. But the thing is, after stalling out their Dynamax, you know, the problem though is... okay, they do double up on Umbreon, so Groudon lives to see another day. But the thing is that Umbreon was actually probably the most important Pokemon in this game for Snarl. You know, the problem is that, like, Thundurus should have Eerie Impulse here, meaning that I really don't want to Dynamax this next turn. Like, I just don't want to max into an Eerie Impulse. As though maxing's not terrible right now either. If I go into a Lecky, they can just Scary Face me, right? And then Landorus should outspeed me. This is so tricky because of the fact that I don't think I can safely max right now. Maybe I can, right? Like, maybe I just max Venusaur anyway, saying, okay, well, you're going to Scary Face and maybe Earthquake me, but that's fine. Because you should have Kyogre in the back, which shouldn't be that scary against Venusaur, and I have a Lecky. The other thing is that they could Eerie Impulse, but if you have Eerie Impulse, Venusaur still does significant damage, and the key thing here is I'm going to get so much mileage out of Vine Lash in this endgame. Let me just think a little bit before I make my moves. I don't want to switch Groudon out into a Lecky because I don't want to eat up an Earthquake and let a Lecky faint. I could protect Groudon here, but then it means Thundurus survives the turn. I also don't want that. So I think I'm fine just going for Vine Lash and Rock Slide here. Oh, you know what they can do? Oh no, they can use Fly on Landorus. You can, okay, but you'd also have to Scary Face Venusaur, because Sun is up, so I'll speed you right now. Protect would be ideal, I think. It is just Eerie Impulse, I'm fine with that. Unless I miss Rock Slide on Thundurus. That did nothing. Maybe I'm not fine with that. I just EQ. It's fine. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Has a lot of damage. Wow. I thought we do a... Oh, it's because they had the special defense boost to be a max quake. I forgot about that. Okay, Rock Slide does hit. That's good. So the key thing here is, yeah, I'm not dealing much damage into Landorus with Venu, but you're on a timer with Gmax Vine Lash. Right? Like 3 turns and that's fainting. And this is the first one already, so 2 turns. I think the problem is that I expect it to be Weakness Policy Kyogre in the back. They bring in Incineroar. Oh, I mean, that's also a problem, right? Because you can just Flare Blitz me. Kyogre should be their last Pokemon. The other issue is I don't know how fast their Kyogre is here. This is a really good game, though, one way or the other. Are you going to have more than 126 speed? I would think so, but I can't say that with 100% confidence. Lost Turn of Sunlight. Flare Blitz is going to wreck Venu. I do have Max Quake, but I'm at -2. Oh, but you know what? I can just Max Quake and Precipice Blades. It's just a... I don't know if that knocks it out. I think I'm fine going for that, though. Because then, even if it doesn't KO, your own Flare Blitz would KO. Also, like, what does Venu go for? Or, sorry, what does Lando go for here? Actually, that's going to survive Precipice Blades. Uh-oh. It may have been better to protect Venusaur here, then. Landorus flying here does make sense. Yeah, they actually go for it. Okay. They blitz into Groudon. Oh, that was... No! Oh, the roller coaster of emotions. We survived, but then we get burnt. I think if we don't get burnt there, we should win the game, because then we win the Weather War. You bring Kyogre. That's fine, though. Like I said, I've got him fairly lucky these last couple of games. I actually still think it's okay, though. Because Landorus guarantees feints after this turn. And I'll survive a fly. And if their last one is Kyogre, like I've got Gieleki now in the back. Yeah. Okay. Unless Fly KOs Venusaur from this range. I could always just max guard here into T-Bolt. I don't want to risk a fly crit. Because the thing I was thinking is like intentionally Thunderbolting Landorus. Actually, I don't even know if Max Quick would knock out Incin, so no, that's a bad play. No special defense boosts. Yep. It's just going to be max guard into T-Bolt here. With Magnet, we should knock out the Incineroar, especially because it's not Insult Vested. Huh? Oh, they are so smart. They didn't bring Kyogre. That's going to win them the game. That actually means that I think Groudon getting burnt didn't even end up mattering. Oh, kudos. It's actually decent damage, though. And a paralysis. Talk about secondary effects today. Alright, it's still winnable. It was so smart to bring Rillaboom as their fourth, though. Well done, well done. I think where I messed up in this game was the turn I clicked Snarl with Umbreon. That should have been a Moonlight. Yeah, I was just worried about a Kyogre switch in there, because in that position, if they had Kyogre and you switch in, I'm in a really bad spot. So I feel like respecting that option is fair. The paralysis on Rillaboom is a big deal. The other question is how much does Grassy Glide actually do to us? The thing is I don't have Sludge Bomb here, so my Venusaur is not really doing damage. Neither is Gieleki, but that didn't look like AB to me. Okay, so if you're my opponent, you have a Fake Out right now. I think it really is just better to Earth Power here and protect the Gieleki. Like, I don't want to get hit by a Fake Out Wood Hammer. My opponent could easily read into that, obviously, and just, like... You could even just Flare Blitz the Venu here. Okay, they do go for Fake Out. Oh, interesting. They might be double Fake Outing? Oh, no, no, no. They went for fake. Okay, fake out Flare Blitz here because they'll survive Earth Power. Yep, that makes sense. I mean, I had no way around that, right? My one way around it was to click Sleep Powder into Incineroar. That may have just been better, actually. Yeah, I think what this essentially boils down to is whether or not we get a paralysis on Rillaboom. Honestly, my opponent deserves this one, but we'll still play it out. If there's any chance to win, you always take it. Let me just check. 3 turns of Grassy Terrain, right? So if they get parried this turn, that would actually be a really big deal. It's also a question of whether or not they have Wood Hammer. They didn't go for Grassy Glide, so I'm thinking it's Wood Hammer here with Grassy Seed. Yeah, they're going to win just by a sliver of HP. So smart to not bring Kyogre in this one. And it's not every day you see that, right? Like, normally you think, oh, it's a Kyogre-Groudon matchup. They're going to bring Kyogre. But very, very, very good decision-making here by them. This was a tricky one because, like, it was Lum on the Landorus, right? If Landorus isn't Lum, then this is a completely different game, and turn 1's amazing for us. But, yeah, it's interesting because we had just used this, like, Swagger, Thundurus, Eerie Impulse, Scary Face combo. And that looks like exactly like what my opponent had on their team here. So, yeah, I wasn't say fully expecting it, but it is, I mean, we should have expected, but more often than not, I feel like the Landorus combos you're going to run into aren't that. So it is a question of lead matchup. I don't think I'm ever leading Instant here if I don't know that it set on Thundurus. I don't feel comfortable with that. We did lead Umbreon. That was good. I could have gone for Foul Play instead, but I don't mind going for Yawn. We could have clicked Yawn into Thundurus as well. Yeah, I think the main thing, though, is like I ended up maxing Venusaur when I knew that I had to deal with Eerie Impulse. And the reason I was fine with that was because I was like, okay, well, they'll have Kyogre in the back. And -2 Venusaur is still going to hurt, especially with Lecky in the back. What I did not consider was the fact that they would not have Kyogre in the back and had Rillaboom instead. So then we would have been better off maybe just going for even a Sleep Powder there. Like, just Sleep Powder into the Landorus and Rock Slide. KO with the Thundurus. Then just switch Venusaur out. Like, that would have been the right approach in this game. But that was really, really smart play by my opponent. So I can't even be upset about that. Like, it is always a risk to not bring a restricted Pokemon. But had they brought Kyogre in this game, they would have lost. And Rillaboom allowed them to secure the victory here in the end. So that was really cool to see. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. So thank you so much as always for watching. Thank you to Leonardo for the team. Once again, details in the description below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to answer the question of the day. And I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.